So a lot of guys have really bad wipeouts when they're surfing critical waves, and there's a few things to be very aware of. Obviously, when you're surfing barreling waves, it's shallow. So the first thing you always want to protect is your head. Never dive face first, head first into the base of the wave, because it could be only a foot deep and you could be connecting the reef or the bottom straight away. So starting off with, if you get stuck at the top of the wave and you kind of have to pull the eject button, I always like to, if I'm at the top of the wave and I'm going over the falls, I like to jump off and try to do a pin drop. Sometimes if you can pin drop at the base of the wave and get through the back of the wave. Again, never dive off head first off the board. It's also a good thing to try jump a little bit away from your board. A lot of injuries are caused by people's boards hitting them in the head or their fins hitting them. So you always want to try jump a little bit away from your board. A pin drop is always a good way. You land feet first, so even if it's shallow, at least you land on your feet. And often this helps you to penetrate the water and get through the back of the wave. Again, jump a little bit away from your board. Then, when you're pulling up into the barrel, when you're riding in the barrel, for me, if I find I'm too deep in the barrel and I know I'm going to have a wipeout, because when the foam ball comes up, it actually stops your board and it sucks your board in. So I use that to take the board away from me. So as I'm riding in the barrel, the foam ball catches my board, I let it catch my board, and I jump forward away from my board, and I always like to land flat in the barrel. Again, you're never diving head first into the trough. I like to dive onto my side, and then I anticipate as I get sucked over with the wave to land on my feet. So especially if the waves are shallow, when I'm going over the falls and underwater, I like to keep my feet like this up. If you put your legs out and it's very shallow, then it's quite easy to break an ankle. So I try to keep everything in as close as possible, protecting my head. And then I also use my hands a lot and my legs to balance myself under the water. So either you're going feet first under the water and with your legs bent up to you, or you're doing a starfish opened up so that the wave is not pinning you straight into the bottom. You opened up like that under the water, and it's kind of almost like a belly flop action where you don't get pushed super deep because you are opened up. Another way to handle a wipeout in the barrel, which my dad likes to do, is if he sees that he's too deep, he literally just flicks his board out in front of him and he dives back into the barrel. And his theory behind that is that as the wave's already broken, the further back you can go in the barrel, the more the energy has been expended. So he goes into that part of the wave, he shoots his board away from him, and hopefully there's a little more energy expended and the wipeout is not as bad. So what is it like wiping out in a huge barrel? You need to expect that it's going to be violent. Firstly, you're right in the vortex, in the most critical part of the wave. So while you're riding the barrel, you're safe. But as soon as you fall off, you become a part of that suction, and you've got to expect that you're going to go up and over the falls. And often that falling lip that you get stuck in as you go up and over, that is driving to the bottom. So you always need to protect your head. Also, because you're in the most violent part of the wave, I always like to keep my limbs in, especially if you're surfing a very violent wave. If you're a little bit like a starfish, you can pull your limbs out in all directions. You can dislocate shoulders, your knee can hit you in the face, all sorts of things can happen. So for me, if I know I'm going to experience a very violent wipeout, I pull everything in, and I'm very compacted, I'm strong, and I'm making sure that my arms are not getting ripped in all directions. Then as the wipeout starts to ease, I open up like this, like a sail, and it helps me to not get pushed deeper. And without trying to frantically swim away from the bottom, you open up like this, you create a sail, and you don't get pushed as deep. And when the wave releases you, you can swim up. A very crucial thing, always try, whatever you do, fall away from your board. If you are, whether you're pin dropping off the lip, try pin drop away from your board. If you're in the barrel, try not to fall on your board. Either, as I said, let the foam ball catch your board and leave it behind you and you dive forward away from it, or you shoot the board in front of you and get away from it. If you find yourself in a position where you know that the board is near you, first and foremost, protect your face and your head. So this is the position I like to assume if I know I'm going to be close to it. Sometimes you can't avoid it and you're near your board and you can just feel it kind of nicking you and it's stuck in the rotation with you, and you're just trying to protect your face and your head as much as possible. And that's really all you can do. Another great thing to do is to stay relaxed. If you're getting really, really pumped under the water, start counting, because you're never going to be under the water for probably more than 10 seconds. 15 seconds is a very, very long hold down. So count while you're underwater, try and somehow enjoy the experience, and yeah, never ever panic. The only time you'd ever release your leash is if the worst case scenario happened. A couple years ago in Hawaii, I got stuck in an underwater cave that was absolutely terrifying. And I actually had to, it was pitch black, I had the cave over me, I was getting churned up against the back wall. Actually, my board became my lifeline there. I had to follow my leash back out of the cave and then get to the surface. So most of the time your board is kind of like your lifeline. However, if you are traveling underwater and your leash gets snagged on a rock, sometimes there's no other way but to get to your foot and release it so you can get to the surface. The other times where you may need to release your leash is if you're surfing like 15 to 20 foot chopu and the wave is just way too thick and gnarly to go through with your board. And then I've seen guys do it like when I was in chopu last time, the most terrifying huge wave came through and it was too thick. Even if you dived through the base of the wave to get under it and you're swimming through, your board would have just pulled you straight back over the falls. And the guys were paddling, and some of them in their paddle, they pulled their little pin to release their board, they dived through and they made it out the back. And their board ended up in 4 pieces, but at least they didn't go over the falls with it.